wanted to give you the number one tip that I have for you for boosting your metabolism. And it's pretty simple, actually. Sometimes we think that boosting our metabolism is like a futile endeavor, but there is actually a lot you can do. Even as a perimenopausal woman / menopausal woman, there's a lot that you can do, okay? So the very first thing I'm going to tell you to boost your metabolism is to build muscle. And by building muscle, I do not mean getting to be this, super bulky girl, but it is super important that you build muscle because muscle is your fat fueling tissue, super hungry tissue, and it eats, in a nutshell, it eats fat for lunch, okay? So building muscle is the number one way. Now, I know sometimes it seems almost easier. This is kind of funny. Sometimes it seems easier to just eat less or to take some extra spices or to take a pill or to drink your gallon of water. And those are all, except for the pill, those are all great things. But in reality, do we really do the work when it comes to eating better? We all know that when we eat better, we lose fat, right? We feel better, we look better, and we eat a little bit less, and so therefore we burn fat. But do we really do that? In all honesty, a lot of people don't do the things that seem like they would be so simple. The things that we think, working out, that's a lot of work. It's work. It's got work in the name, right? But, and there's the piece of, I don't even know what to do to work out to build muscle. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But think about it like this. Sometimes our head is kind of like, we're going to gravitate as human beings. We're going to gravitate toward what seems to be the easiest thing. But then when we really take a minute and look at it, do we actually do the easiest thing? And now some of you may be able to answer yes to this, but when was the last time you actually drank that gallon of water that you were going to drink? And I don't mean that doesn't work. I'm just saying that sometimes in our head, we list these things that we're going to do that we think are going to be super effective, and they would be if we did them, okay? So that is the thing. We need to come up with a list of things that we can do that we're actually going to do, because this is where the frustration cycle begins. When we know what we need to do, and we know that we know this should be pretty simple. I made a list, I put it on my fridge, but then we don't do it, or we don't know the specifics about what to do. I think that is one of the things that really gets people frustrated is they know they should do these things, but the actual specifics, or knowing, we see on social media or the internet that this thing's supposed to work, but it didn't work for us, so we must have been doing it wrong, and then we get frustrated because we see all this information and we don't actually know how to implement it properly because we don't get the full story. But when it comes to strength training, you ladies, let me tell you why. I totally believe that knowledge inspires motivation. And it's really important for you to understand why the strength training is so important, because I feel like when you understand it, when you understand the physiology of what's going on in your body, with what I'm about to tell you, you will go, totally makes sense why I should be strength training and how that's going to make a difference in boosting my metabolism. By now, a lot of us have not been doing as much activity by now, as in COVID by now, not have been doing as much activity as we would like to, as we should be, and maybe as we thought we would be when we thought we were going to have all this time off. Because again, the reality is I have a lot of clients that hold through the summer, and they say, well, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do all these active things in the summer, and then in the fall they come back to me and they're like, yeah, no, that didn't actually happen the way I thought it was. And that's not to shame my clients. We're just human. And sometimes that can be hard unless we have it laid out for us. So for you ladies, when it comes to strength training, the reason it is so important is because as we age, we start to, there's a little bug here, we start to decline in the amount of estrogen that we produced. When we were younger ladies, the estrogen was our muscle building hormone. It helped us to maintain the muscle. And those of you watching, raise your hand if you can think about when you were in your 20s and you could just go out for a run and do a push-up and you're like, I got my body back, right? Remember how easy it was? I laugh about it because it was so easy then and we had no idea what we were blessed with back in the day, right? And how it just came so quickly. Now you are probably noticing that it doesn't happen that quickly, and the reason is our hormones, and I don't just mean the girl hormones like estrogen and progesterone, but we have several other hormones that we used to produce when we were, say, 30 and under, that were working for us in a fat-burning, muscle-building sort of way. And now we actually don't produce those. one of the hormone is estrogen. It declines as we age. Estrogen was the thing that helped us maintain our muscle. So we could work out a little here and there, but we would stay firm and strong, right? That used to be working for us big time and not so much anymore. So this is why women, we tend to lose it quickly. And you know how you're like, God, I feel so squishy. It's like only been a week, and maybe it's not as squishy as we think, but it definitely does not stick around like it used to. So strength training is super important to constantly be moving forward, to be building that muscle that your body used to be able to maintain for you. And now it's not working as much. We can't just kind of coast along anymore. So the strength training is something to be fusing into your programs at least 3 times a week. I really prefer 5 times a week of some kind of strength training, maybe 4. So something we really, really need to make a priority. I know that cardio is a little bit easier because maybe it's not physically easier, but to put together a cardio plan is a lot easier for most people than to put together a strength training routine, because there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of times we don't know exactly how to make sure we're doing the moves right, how to modify the moves, how to make sure we're doing enough reps or enough weight to get the impact that we want. But strength training, that's what we do here. But strength training is super key. Most of my days here at the studio, we focus on strength training. 3 out of the 4 days, we focus on strength training in here. So that is the one thing. The other hormone, there's several, but the other hormone is human growth hormone. So this we used to produce up until the age of 30, and this is what kept us with a high burning metabolism. It helped build muscle, and after the age of 30, that rapidly declines, and the only time we actually produce much human growth hormone is when we sleep. And probably some of you peri/menopausal women are like, yes, sleep? What is that? Because our sleep always gets disrupted, right, as we get older. Often. Not always, but often. Many of the women I talk to have disrupted sleep. And I have one client right now that's struggling with getting the weight off, and I told her, let's not even worry about, gave her meal plans and the whole thing, but I said, you know what, before you focus on those meal plans, we need to focus on your sleep. She's getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, not enough sleep to help her produce that human growth hormone. She's not in a sleep stage long enough to produce that hormone. It's not being, she's in her, what is she now? She's in her 60s, so it's not being produced naturally by her body like it used to be when she was in her 30s or younger. So now she really needs to prioritize that sleep, even probably over other things, just to get that sleep cycle back into a rhythm and to be able to produce the human growth hormone. So those 2 hormones, super important. So I was going to say in my title, the best thing you could do, I believe, the best thing is strength training. However, there are some people, let's say you're strength training and you're training 4 days a week and you're trying to build this muscle. If you're not sleeping, you're not repairing that muscle, you're not producing the human growth hormone. So the other little tidbit about that human growth hormone is that the other time we can produce that is when we are strength training. So we go back to strength training, which is why it's so important to add strength training to your routine, okay? Because when we get a burn in the muscle, we stimulate 2 important hormones. One is human growth hormone, the other is testosterone, and those are hormones that help us build muscle and burn fat. So we circle back to strength training. Super important. I hope you guys will ponder on that, especially because, a lot of times in the summer we think, oh, I'm going to get out, we're hiking, we're doing things, and I love that. I love that you're getting out and doing all that stuff, but just the other day in the gym, the ladies, we were talking about that, like when we're working in our garden, yes, we're being active, and maybe we're picking up a bag of compost and moving it once, which is much different, as the ladies were saying the other day, that when we have an organized workout where we're specifically lifting a certain amount of weight a certain number of times because that's what I prescribe to them to get the result they want. Yes, being active in the garden and out in the hills and all this is amazing, but it also should be a bonus to the strength training that we're doing in the gym to keep that muscle. Because in 3 months' time, in the summertime, you can definitely lose a lot of strength. And so an example, my husband had surgery in, I think it was February, had to take off 8 weeks of doing anything, and he's a man, right? And he said he is, meaning that men produce testosterone, it comes a lot more quickly for them, they can build muscle quickly, and they can maintain their muscle, but he just noticed how quickly, not doing anything at all, it just tanked. And so we're starting back at ground one, and we are getting that muscle back for him, but it is, if it's a challenge for a man for 8 weeks think about for a woman for the next 8 weeks of summertime when we don't have testosterone that works as powerfully for us, or that we do have some testosterone, but not to the degree of a man. But we also don't have that estrogen working for us anymore if we are in that perimenopausal toward menopausal state. Okay?